Two words that don't go together, godly and feminism. Let's look at it. I'm Zach with The Average Christian, welcoming you to this video about, yes, godly feminism, and the words do go together. I'm glad you're here. I hope that you've subscribed. If you haven't, I hope that we'll earn your subscription. And at the end of this video, you hit that little red button and the notification bell that will let you keep up with our new releases. Look, this channel is just about what it means to be a Christian and looking at a real relationship with God by exploring truth, exploring practicality. How do I use this stuff, not just know it, and also by looking to dispel the myths about Christianity. So this video is about what seems like such a bad word to people who are Christians or who are godly, feminism. Now, the Bible is actually for women, so let's look at that together. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 8 through 12. Some of you won't like this, and some of you will, and some of you will like all of it. For man was not made from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for woman, but woman for man, meaning woman was created for man. That is why a wife ought to have a symbol of authority on her head. Because of the angels. Nevertheless, in the Lord, woman is not independent of man, nor man of woman. For as woman was made from man, so man is now born of woman. All things are from God. He's saying, look, there's a distinction. If you go back to verse 3, he says, there's God over Christ, Christ over man, man over woman. Triggered, I'm sure. That's not the point. I'm not trying to do that. But that's how the hierarchy, if you will, the orderliness of it was set up. The point he's making, if you go back and read the rest of this too, is that there's no problem distinguishing God from Christ. There's no problem distinguishing Christ from man. There should be no problem distinguishing men and women. That's a whole nother video altogether. Let's stick to the feminism part of this. There needs to be a greater appreciation for women. And I'm going to try to get all this in one video. We may have to break this up into a two-part because I want to tell you about some observations that I have as well. And I want to properly approach this subject and show the way God created you, women, and how wonderful it is to be, and how you don't need to be redefined, and you don't need to have this role or that role and change it around in order to find meaning and purpose and all that. It was already given. And if I'm the man that God made me to be, and if you're the woman that God made you to be, then we're living up to the purpose. And it really is wonderful the way he set it up. Now, there are misunderstandings all over the place. And it's not just that the world, for those of us who are Christians watching this, it's not just that the world has looked at Christianity wrong. Now, some of us have been abusive, all right? Some of us have misunderstood. Some of us as Christian men have been dismissive of women and have not treated them properly. I'll give you an example. And this is not even it's not on purpose, all right? But I'll give you an example. We used to have these lessons. I haven't heard them in a while, but I'd hear lessons quite often when I was younger on the woman's role. Now, what that meant after hearing a few of them translated was like, if you had a 30-minute sermon, 25 minutes of what women can't do in the church, and 5 minutes of, oh yeah, by the way, you guys can teach the kiddies and bake the cookies. Wow. I'm sure women were listening to those sermons and think, thank God I'm a woman. Look at all the glory. But that's generally what I heard. The first time I was ever given, I was like, I don't know, 23 years old or something like that. And Dempsey Jordan gave me the topic of the woman's role at Bible camp. And I thought, what a killer. And that's one of the first things I thought of, is what I'd heard over and over and over. And if I was listening to that, how I would feel. How do women feel in our culture in the past? Well, mistreated, not allowed to vote, not given the same recognition, not even given the same value. See, we're not even talking about value, and I'm going to ramble here, but all right, feminism is this, clearly defined: to define, establish, and achieve the political, economic, personal, and social equality of the sexes. No problem. We are all equal. We're just human beings, so we have trouble with that, whether it comes to race, whether it comes to belief systems, whether it comes to gender, sex, however you want to label that. The advocacy of a woman's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. Well, we want to talk about women's rights to a degree, but I want to challenge that concept even as well. So let's just start with the value of a woman. There's so many ways to go about this, but I don't want it to be confusing. The counterpart and completion of a man, first of all. Now, look, I've got a lot of scripture references. Maybe some of these will be up on the screen. Maybe not. Maybe it's just something you write down and go back and read later. But the counterpart and the completion of a man. And it's not just a stupid Tom Cruise line from, what was that movie? Jerry Maguire. It's "You complete me." It's not that, but it really is. I mean, when you go back and look at Genesis 2 and God made it's not a realization like God didn't know before, but God makes a statement about the fact that man, Adam, who's the only human being on earth at the time, has nobody like him. He's like Gonzo, for lack of a better a better illustration, but he has nobody else like him. And so right after this recognition, he sends him out to name the animals, because that makes sense. It's not good that man should be alone. Adam, go name some animals. Okay. Now, what he learns while he's out naming the animals is there is nobody for him. He learns this. See, he didn't really have a sense of need, an understanding of his need of Eve, until he went out and found out there's nobody else for him. It would have been one thing if God would have just made Eve and said, "Here you go, Adam." Thanks, cool. But once you recognize that need, it's the reason why people hopefully, truly come to Jesus, is they realize this need they have. That's the point. Once Adam realizes this, God puts him to sleep, takes a rib, forms her from him, which is an honor, which is how he names or labels her, so to speak. And it's in Genesis chapter 2, verses 20 through 23. And then he wakes up and God presents, in just plop Eve next to him. But he presents like you would give to somebody. And here comes Eve walking. And I can't imagine how beautiful and how little her looks had to do with beauty, but how beautiful she was to Adam. And Adam gives probably the greatest compliment ever from a man to a woman. "This at last is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. She's a part of me. We are one." And then it talks about marriage. Go out and man and woman shall leave father and mother and cling to one another. That's part of the value. The other part of it is a big one that just gets overlooked, that she brings new life. You know why Eve is called Eve? Genesis 3:20, because she's the mother of all living. That's how I know that God didn't create a bunch of pockets of people all over the earth. She was the mother of all living. That's one of the points that I made, that the Bible makes in 1 Corinthians 11, is that unless men start to feel too big and too powerful and we don't need women, well, where did you come from? God would be saying there. By the way, how'd you get here? Because ain't nobody showed up without a mama. And me included, you included, men. So you have this human being designed by God who makes children. And it's unreal. This is where new life comes from. I know it's the father and the mother. Please do not make comments about the birds and the bees. I get all that. But they give birth and bring new life about. And by the way, in the Hebrew, just as a footnote here, Eve sounds like the Hebrew word for life giver and resembles the word for living. All right, still talking about value. Men cannot exist without women. That's the point he made in 1 Corinthians 11 through 12. And look here, the defining quality of a woman. Okay, let me stop here, ladies, and say this. For all those who would say that submission is degrading, that to be submissive is devaluing, you shouldn't have to submit to anybody. First of all, it's a stupid concept, because everybody submits to somebody. I work a job and submit to superiors. I don't care about the business owners. They submit to their customers. Everybody has to be submissive to some way. So to say it devalues a person is baloney, first of all. But ladies, let me switch it around a little bit like this and show you this from a few verses. If you just listen to these. Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. 5:24, now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit everything to their husbands. Colossians 3:18, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. John 6:57, John 8:28. Notice Jesus here in these two verses. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, whoever feeds on me will also live because of me. So Jesus said to them, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, that I do nothing on my own authority. So Jesus said, God sent me, I do nothing on my own authority. What was he saying? I voluntarily submit. And if you think about it, one of the biggest defining qualities of what makes a woman, if it's submission to her husband, as far as this relationship, I don't mean all in all, but in the relationship between husband and wife, this submissive quality that just takes a beating so much, if it's so bad and so awful, it was one of Jesus' defining qualities, to be submissive. He submitted himself to human beings to be murdered for my sake. So we're saying that's dishonorable. We're saying that's devaluing, that's degrading. Look, when men behave badly, even Christian men, it's people have done a lot of things in the name of Christ and according to the Bible that weren't really, and they're not according to the Bible, and they misbehaved. I understand all that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the purity of the truth. And when it's done like this, it's honorable. One of the greatest qualities of being a Christian is to submit as well. All right, look, there's a lot more to say about this. We're going to have to break this off for another video. I know we did the same thing with toxic masculinity, and I hope that this at least piques your interest. It may drive you to, and I'm not usually we're not gonna ask for comments that much anymore, but if there's something that you heard in this that piqued your interest, or questions that you have, or something you disagree with, because if you share this with other people who disagree, they're gonna have a reaction to it. It's not the point. But I hope it makes you think about some things. And if there's some other parts or aspects of this that we can dive into, let me know about that as well. And thank you for watching. Now, subscribe, like, or dislike.